2020 to order with the adoption of the agenda. So I'd like
Councillor Rhind.
Moved by Councillor Rhind, seconded by Councillor Charlotte. You still there?
Yep.
Okay, and you're moving second, and adoption of the minutes of November 4th. Councillor Rhind, seconded by Councillor Charlotte. All in favor? Motion's carried.
I think I have to have the agenda up, don't I? Yeah.
We don't have it up yet.
No, I'm just going to see. I can't. Just a minute. Okay. Sorry.
Yep. And so now, now that we've got that part done, Nicole, if you want to move home, then we're going to go into budget public works.
Perfect. I'm tuned in. I got my notepad with me, and we're listening.
Good enough. Thanks, Nicole.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, and you can see the agenda on there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry. We've done the minutes. Yeah, okay, sorry, Gary. I've got it up now.
Okay, so do you want to click onto the engineering and public works budget by cost type, and then Steve can weigh in, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah, I think that's the best thing to do. I'm going to add a couple little comments. First of all, up front, basically, the only changes to the budget numbers from 2020 are that the grant revenue that we're getting for the one position that's being funded partially by FCM, that extends until September, and then that grant funding falls off. So there's a reduction in grant funding revenue, you'll see. And then the wages have gone up. There's a 2% increase overall. And then I've also increased the garbage function wages by another 27,000 in total. That increase is covered partially by the, it's covered by the garbage fee increase.
Okay.
And the only other increase is for the internal equipment costs. And that's the annual increase we're doing to try to reduce the deficit in the vehicle and equipment reserve fund. So that's the overview. If you've got any questions, we will.
Yeah, sorry, maybe you mentioned that, but the 5% expense increase to external equipment charges, that's for what?
That's for the cost of the fuel and the insurance and the maintenance on the vehicles. And then eventual replacement. Right now, we're actually running that fund at a deficit. And so we're trying to get it to the point where it's fully funded.
But these are operating budgets. So why wouldn't do we always budget for reserves in our operating budget?
Yes, in this case, we do. Yeah, we always budget for transfers to reserve, but this is actually to cover the cost as well of the fuel and maintenance of the vehicles as well. So there's an internal equipment charge that we do. So the revenue shows up in the equipment fund, and then the expenses go through the operating budget.
Okay. And then the wage increase, that's union? Yes,
there's 2% for the union.
Yeah.
So if you take the 2020 budget, 2% of that's about $45,000-ish. And then there's another $27,000 that's been added to that as well, to because the garbage function, the wages were under.
What does that mean? Like they were under what?
So the actual spending on wages is actually more than what I've been budgeting. So I've adjusted the budget. And then, of course, the 2% increase for the garbage fee will cover that off.
Okay, so does that mean then, I'm just trying to understand the wages piece. So you're saying in 2019, it was budgeted 2.3 million.
Yeah, so if you take the, so the 2% of the 2020 budget, which was almost 2.3 million, 2% of that is $45,500. And then if you take that 45.5 and then add the 27 onto it, you get 72,500.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand where the 27,000,
Yes.
you're saying that that's because you've been under budgeting in
Under
previous
budgeting,
years?
yes. Yeah.
And then is that shown on here? I'm just having a hard time.
The under budgeting, well, it would be, so the wages, yeah, because it's all the wages for all the departments lumped together. A minute, I'm gonna see if I go over to sub-department now. Yeah, unfortunately, I've only got the actuals in here, so I'm not showing you the breakdown of the wages out of the garbage function. The budget was 362. We've spent 280.
Mhm.
I'm budgeting that with the 2% increase, we're going to be over that number. So
With the 2% increase on the 280?
yeah, just a minute. So I'm just going to bring up something else.
That's not very much money.
Sonia, if you go up one page, that'll show the total garbage.
Oh, the revenues?
Yeah, so
That's the revenue side, Bill.
revenues are also up from,
Yes, the fees are up, and then the expenses are up too. So
Okay, well, I guess we just take your word for it. But
396 is the budgeted expenses, and then 396 is the budgeted revenues.
okay.
Any
Gary,
other questions?
Do you mind if I ask one, Gary? Or
Yeah, go ahead, Cody. Don't be afraid to ask if you're here.
okay, thanks. Yeah, just further to the garbage question that Jackie was talking about, Tanya. So you're saying that it's going to cost we're going to budget $27,000 extra this year to ensure that we are properly budgeting for the garbage wages, which makes sense. We don't want to under budget on wages, but so how much are the garbage fees that were approved yesterday? What are those going to bring in?
It's an extra $2, so it's $124 a year instead of $122.
No, I mean in total city revenue.
Oh, that's the 396. So that's up here. I don't know if I can highlight it if that shows up or not.
Yeah, it shows.
Yeah.
So the 2020 final budget is 390. So the $2 increase is, and then you're saying 2021. So the $2 increase will bring in about $6,000.
Yeah.
So how does the $6,000 increase that we're bringing in cover off a $27,000 expense?
Because I actually had under budgeted in 2020 for the wages. I should have had them higher. You'll see in 2020, I only had budget for garbage of 362, but I had revenue coming in of 390. So I actually had some revenue coming in from the garbage that was offsetting taxation, but that's not correct. So I've now corrected.
So the revenue that you're budgeting now for garbage is 396 with the new fees, and the expense is 396. So basically breaking even.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just wondering. So on the other page, then, under the general operating fund budget, because it'll show an increase of 27,000, then the garbage fee page will show an increase in revenue, and we're just kind of there's no way that to put. Like it's just, I'm just trying to understand if we charge the garbage, if we put the garbage salary and wages on the general operating budget there, shouldn't we also include the garbage revenue there as well?
Yes, and we do. And it's in the sale of service line. You'll see that it's only gone up $6,200.
Okay. And then the rest is just the under budgeting. Okay, I got you then. I'm with you. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
And
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the internal equipment charges.
Yeah.
What's the deficit, the total deficit that's running in there right now? And is that getting borrowed from the electrical funds then to make that up?
Yeah, we will borrow at the end of this year from the from the electric reserve fund.
So, but all departments contribute to that fund, right?
No, the electric reserve fund is the one that was established when.
No, sorry, not that one. All departments have an internal equipment charge.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, everyone that's got vehicles that are being used for the functions. So an exception to that might be the finance department. IT has one, but finance doesn't because we don't have a city vehicle.
Okay.
Ingrid's department doesn't get it, but
okay. So what's the deficit like? And when I say deficit, I mean how much are we borrowing from that electrical fund right now yearly?
At the end of I'm borrowing in there. I've got about $400,000 that we're borrowing. And then
Okay.
the number does get bigger for a while because we have some larger purchases that need to be covered off in 2021 and 2022. And then it starts to get better going out. So in sorry, you guys' pictures, about 2028 is when it starts to get better. Like positive.
So you're positive in 2028.
Mhm.
And that's if if every single department increases their reserves, their equipment charges by 5% every single year.
Yes. Yeah.
So every year, for instance, then you're proposing that engineering and public works contributes another 5%, so 47,000 basically every year until 2028.
Yeah, exactly. And in the short term, we'll do internal borrowing to cover the deficit.
So what's the total then this year that you would, because that obviously comes from taxation then. So what's the total that you're trying to contribute more to the reserve, the internal equipment charge then? Because it's 5% of their total budget, right?
Yeah, just a minute. I'm just going to. Sorry, I'm just looking at my spreadsheet.
No worries. I'm just trying to understand and make sure that when we say inflation for wages is like 1.25 or 1.5%, and we say to people in council like, yeah, we need this much for the union wages and whatever, which is inevitable, of course, that we're not also putting into that phrase the equipment charges, because that's a separate issue.
It is. Yes, you're right. The revenues are currently about $1.5 million a year.
And what are you proposing to raise it this year?
It'd be just under 1.6 because there's fire department in there as well. So if we're just looking at public.
Sorry, so go ahead.
So if you're just looking at the general fund, it's about $1 million for the general fund, and then I'm bumping it up to about 1.1, like 1.116. So just a minute, I'm just gonna.
Because every department with vehicles contributes, but obviously public works is
Yeah,
the biggest.
so in the general fund, it works out to about another $53,000 in expenses.
An expense? No, like, I mean, revenue bringing in.
Yeah, it's another 53,000 in revenues for the vehicle and equipment fund, and it hits the O&M for the general fund by that same 53. Then there's also an impact to water, sewer, and fire.
Okay, so 47,000. So you're saying about 100,000 then between the two.
Yeah.
So 47,000 of it comes from engineering, and the other 53 gets made up from the other departments.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah,
sorry. Just wanted to
engineering
clarify.
public works and engineering is the biggest portion of it because they have all the carpenters as well as all the snow removal equipment and the dump trucks and graders and stuff like that.
Makes sense. Was just looking for the number. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, let's move along then.
Steve, do you want to talk about the sub-department level?
I would defer to Darren, who runs the sub-departments. Generally speaking, as Tanya has indicated when we started the discussion today, we're keeping everything the same. A couple of points of interest, snow removal budget for this year has been expended, and that was due to a big 2020 winter snowfall. And so we are going to probably go over, depending on how much more snow we get in the next month and a half.
Oh, you're already over.
We're over.
Yeah, just echo Steve's thoughts there a little bit. We obviously haven't asked for any wages in these sub departments, any increases, and we're managing there. The snow removal, just going back to this recent snowfall, we managed it quite cautiously. I thought we left some snow in the residential areas. We did very little there. We could have went out. But we didn't. We tried to stay to a little bit downtown and then did the arterials collectors. we did take a bit of a beating there, but I think we managed it okay. If it was going to continue to snow in the next week, we would have went probably. But looking at the weather, I mean, we even left some of those 2-foot windrows and they're practically gone now. So we're really trying to be conservative, just so you know, with that snow removal portion this year, and managing that as cautiously as we can with that in mind.
Okay. Jackie, you have a question?
Yeah. What is rental income? And it seems to be way down. What is that for?
That would be for the courthouse and the RCMP. And so there is a bit of a timing issue there. The courthouse is partly because we're not renewing some of the leases, but there's also the payment for the Service BC that's in there. It hasn't, they only pay twice a year.
Gotcha.
And so some of that's not in there yet. And so, yeah, it's
for the
timing issue.
For the contracts that aren't being renewed, is there a plan to replace them with other tenants?
I don't believe so, because I'm not sure that we're actually supposed to have non-government agencies in the building.
Okay.
That's part of our lease and our agreement with the courts.
Okay. So then, have we considered that? It doesn't look like we've reduced our rental income, but maybe we should for the 2021
yes, and
budget.
I might have to a little bit. Yes.
Okay.
And I will be reviewing that.
Okay. And then the engineering expenses, engineering and public works, is that also timing? Is that like, it looks like we have like 500,000 left. Is that just because we still have snow and the end of the year?
In engineering?
Yeah, it looks like engineering, public works, like we had like 2020 actuals are not quite at the budget.
Yeah, so public works this is 10 months out of 12. So they're tracking like 225 to 280. So I expect that they'll be up where they need to be. Engineering, it's partly because when Derek, he's also gets charged out to capital projects. And so he was doing a lot of capital projects this year. And so his hours and costs may be coded to that, would be coded to that.
And street lighting is a big one. It looks like we've only done almost half.
Yes, they got some grant funding, I understand, for that. And so they did it that way.
Okay. Well, that's great. And then environmental health garbage.
Yeah,
what is that?
Yeah.
Why is that down? Is that a timing thing as well?
Nope. I'm finishing off on my calculator. I'm expecting them to be up at their budget, and then So
okay, that's it. That's all my questions.
There could be some timing issues for tipping fees too. Sometimes they might be out by a month.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Can you just slide that back up just a little bit, please?
Yeah.
I just had a question about the where is it here? The street maintenance and sidewalk maintenance. Those are significant. Well, the street maintenance is like down almost 100,000, like the actual. Are we going to still be spending hopefully that 100,000 in the next 5 weeks? Or are we just coming in under budget this year, or?
Darren?
Yeah, we'll still spending. We have been recently. So when is your actual up to again there? Sorry, Tom. Yeah, so there's
end
still
of October, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes there's a timing difference with some of the invoices at this time of year, because if it was done in late October, we won't get the invoice until November. And so depending on when in November it comes in, we may get it back into October or we might not. Just depends on the timing.
Yeah, we'll be spent.
Okay, good. Awesome.
Any other questions?
I don't have any on this page, no.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go over and talk about the capital.
Yep.
Hopefully this comes up. Oh, it's not too bad, actually. So these are all the capital projects that are planned going forward for the 15 years of the plan. You'll see there's a lot of money being planned to be spent on roads in the middle of the here.
So I just had a question about the roads there.
Go ahead.
So the TIR is Transportation Infrastructure Reserve, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
And then the one above it, what's CWGT?
Community Works gas tax.
Okay, so in 2021, we're proposing spending $1 million and $25,000
Mhm.
and on roads maintenance, and then 250 grand of that comes from the gas tax, right?
Yes.
Okay, so to my question yesterday, then, why are we trying to raise another $1 million in the next 4 years to get off the gas tax if we're only using $250,000? Like theoretically, if we raised $250,000,
Mhm.
like if we put $250,000 more into the TIR, that would eliminate what's coming from the gas tax. No.
I'm going to just change what I'm sharing for a minute.
One sec. We'll be right back.
Okay. Can you see? You should be able to see something that shows Transportation Infrastructure Reserve Fund at the top, and then years 2021 out to 2035. Can you see that, Gary?
Nope.
What are you seeing?
15-year summary of reserve and surplus projections.
Yep.
Okay, so somewhere down the side, I should be seeing that TIR, total statutory
Oh, yeah,
reserve.
just a minute. Sorry. I'm sorry. This is me learning how to share screens. Yeah, that's what I'm sharing. Oh, no, I'm sharing the wrong one. This is the one I need to share. Sorry. There you go. Now you should see Transportation Infrastructure Reserve Fund.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So this is going forward 15 years. So I'm projecting at the beginning of 2021, so the end of this year, we're going to have $356,000 in that reserve fund. And so I'm showing here what we would be bringing in from operations. This is the contributions here coming from the budget.
Okay.
In, and this is the expenditures out. I have taken out the 2% tax increase transfer to reserves for 2021. So this was originally another $250,000 higher. And so you see that down here, by taking that out, we have a bit of a challenge up until 2034. The fund's in negative.
Okay.
That's without the 2% taxation in 2021 to transfer to the reserves. So you see, this is what's coming out.
Yep.
And then
Right.
This is what
That makes sense that we're trying to avoid a deficit, but yesterday you had said it was to eliminate the usage of the gas tax.
It is, and that's part of the reason why this number here, you see it's going up in these years. There's other things that also come out of this reserve fund. It's not just roads.
Right, I understand that, but so I just wanted to clarify what the total amount every year from the gas tax was, because my understanding was that it was significantly higher yesterday, but I thought we only brought in every year about 400 and something thousand in it.
In gas tax money?
Yeah.
Yeah, we bring in, a minute, I'll tell you what I'm budgeting that we bring in, because that's, a minute, I have to find it.
If you go back to the 15-year
Yes.
plan, it does show that we're weaning ourselves from the gas tax money for the road maintenance activities, going from $250,000 this year to I think 100,000 in year 4, and then down to nothing in year 2027.
Yeah, I saw that. So is that assuming that? But is that being factored in with the 2% then? Considered, like the 2% property tax increase?
Yes.
Okay.
2% property tax increase is an increase to the transfers to the reserve that's funding in part the road maintenance.
Yep. Right. Okay. I just wasn't sure if these were factoring that in because that was a past resolution.
Yes.
Okay. So,
yes, I did. It's when you guys made that resolution for the 2020 budget year.
Yeah.
I factored in for the entire 15 years. So you'll see that this lower number here does increase every year, and it increases not only because we're reducing reliance on the gas tax, but it's also that 2%. I'm assuming the ENR is going to be 2% a year for now because I don't have anything else to base. Like I just have to make an estimate, right?
Gotcha. Now, I was just, if I may, right, just a question. Oh, I was just going to ask a question about like the stormwater expenses. Currently, we only have a water frontage tax, right?
Sewer frontage.
Or sorry, sewer frontage.
Yeah.
But we don't have any parcel taxes.
No, just the one for the sewer. The sewer frontage is effectively a parcel tax because it's based on the frontage rather than the assessment value.
So that was something we had briefly talked about kind of in the last year's budgeting as another way to look into. Is that something, like, I think that's something that seriously should be looked into in terms of water, but more so stormwater, as we know with climate change and whatever, that cost is going to go up and up and up. Is that something you could look into this year? Because that's better, in my opinion, than just generally taxing all properties to fund the reserve, whereas to cover some of these things, whereas if we charge them based more on their frontage, then it's more so you pay for what you have kind of thing. Yes,
and I agree. I think that there are some areas where we could potentially use a parcel tax for sure. There is a bit of a, it depends on the situation, but yes, it is. And it was on my to-do list this year. It was one of the things I was going to do some research into until COVID hit us. And so it's still on my to-do list for sure.
Okay. If I might add, Councillor Yonker, we are undertaking this stormwater management master planning. And so we do have, we have identified areas where we have insufficient drainage capabilities, and we also have areas where we have no infrastructure at all.
For sure.
And so we need to be building that model and figuring out where we need to spend money and what that looks like, which will then give, again, as in last
an idea of how much to charge.
Then we know what we need to collect and how to distribute those costs.
Okay, that makes sense. You don't want to really charge if you're not sure what to charge for. Is that something that's going to be undertaken this year then, that study?
That is underway already, and it will
perfect.
It's part of the liquid waste management plan. So the liquid waste management plan will look at the sewer system, sanitary sewer, and the wastewater treatment plant. The other component is the storm drain system.
Okay. There was only really one big thing, Gary, that I saw in here that I think doesn't need to be funded by the city, and I think it can wait 2 years. We had talked about the Mackenzie Avenue power upgrade at the RMI committee, and Ingrid had briefly said that she felt that those funds could be used to fund that because it ultimately would be a tourism thing. Like upgrading the electrical would allow us to do like big, larger Christmas displays downtown, that kind of thing, and like a big tourist draw. So just would be my opinion that I think obviously our funds are spent for next year, but next year we're developing a new 3-year resort development strategy with another probably about $2 million for 2022 to 2022, 3, and 4. I think that might be something that might be an idea to kick at least down a couple years, because we probably could use that funding from elsewhere.
I would concur with that assessment myself, only because we don't know what the farmers market is going to look like in the future, nor whether we need to accommodate a whole bunch of food trucks, as you've described, decorations and the loads on those things, those are our existing systems. So until we know what that picture looks like, it's kind of hard for us to design a system for that load, right?
Yeah. It just seems a little preemptive to do it now if we don't know, like with COVID and new markets downtown, and based on the transport, study that's being done this year, what will Mackenzie look like? And I mean, it would suck to do some sort of electrical upgrade and then go, oh crap, we have to do another 50 grand or something. And especially if we could get it funded from elsewhere.
And I would like to do things twice.
And that makes sense. And as we move forward, especially when we talk about Christmas displays and whatnot, I don't know where we're at with that sort of thing, Darren, but it seems to me the newer lights coming out use less electricity, and as we start to upgrade some of the stuff that we have in stock now, maybe waiting for upgrades on electrical is probably going to be the best thing. We've got enough electrical to service our lights and things that we have now, like our street lights, etc. It's just the additional stuff when we're plugging in a food truck or a Santa Claus light.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, we definitely need to do some upgrading. We're pretty much maxed with our food trucks that are now permitted to be in the plaza area,
right,
in the parking lot areas, and then as well with any street lights, we can put out some LEDs and accommodate that right now, but we're kind of piecing that together, putting cords overhead to plugging into GFIs on personal buildings and getting permission that way. So it's pretty piecemeal for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Just a question too, why is it something like gas detectors? I mean, it's so minuscule in compared to the whole budget, but isn't that something that like that's something that is an O&M more so, no?
Sorry, I'm trying to find the amount.
10,000.
Yes.
Yeah, gas detectors. Like, are those gas detectors in our buildings or?
Yes, and yeah.
Aaron, you want to weigh in?
I just thought it would be in the O&M because that's something like not really a large capital cost.
No,
if that's
it's not, and sometimes I do move it to O&M, and I may still. It depends sometimes on whether it's a one-time expenditure or something that's going to have to be going ongoing in all the buildings, and then I might shift. Then I'll shift it over to O&M if it's like ongoing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I only say that because obviously when you put things in here, it's easy for councils and future councils to kick things out. But if it's something that you are always going to need, then it should just be budgeted to be an everyday expense kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes, and I have been going through slowly and picking out all the smaller amounts and shifting them over to O&M when possible. This year is a little more challenging because I'm trying not to increase the O&M budgets overall. So, yeah.
Okay. Any further comments on capital? Okay.
If I might add, Mayor, I'm sorry. We also have some other projects that will be coming forward. You know, this was generated last year, and as we discussed last evening, we do have the school safety program that we want to undertake. We also have a lift station at Oscar Street, which will service the future housing society lands as the maximum capacity that we need to consider building sooner than later, and that will also supplement Johnson Heights neighborhood plan. And so we have a few other projects that we do need to bring forward for council's consideration beyond what is in the existing plan, which we have not
for 2021
adjust.
Sorry, is that for 2020? Sorry, is that for 2021 or just within the 5-year?
I would like to see them completed in 2021, and so we will have to bring that forward to you soon.
So there's no stats or anything at this point that you can elaborate on. It's just that'll come forward to us, and then we'll look at that, Steve, as it comes forward.
I'm just curious, like, will those future projects, does that run? Like, is it anticipated, Tanya, that runs 2021 into a deficit, or are there other projects we're going to kick out then in lieu of those, or?
It'll actually depend on what type of projects they are and what I'm funding, what reserve fund they would be funded out of, as to whether they would fit in 2021 without other adjustments or not. So once I have more details, I'll update that.
Okay.
So Steve, we can wait for details on that rather than you giving us just a part of stuff.
Thank you.
I think that's that would be the prudent thing. So appreciate that, and thanks for mentioning that these things are going to come forward, even though we talked a bit about that last night. School safety thing is a big thing in our community that we want to talk to and talking as we move forward, but also we need to make sure that the sewer stuff flows. So we'll talk about that as well.
And again, completion of all these master plans will give us then a really good handle on how these capital projects come forward, and knowing the timing of them due to development pressures or just age. And unfortunately, we're in a situation where we're making every effort based upon our brains and what's in our brain, not what is dictated by science and the engineering.
Right.
And so that's why we end up with a lot of projects that we think we want to do, like let's do the electrical upgrades, but we know that we have to do these other things in sequence or in parallel to make the logic work.
Yeah.
And so all of these master planning exercises will help really refine our long-term capital planning and allow us to have a much more robust budgeting program that is dedicated and dictated by need and not what we think, but we know we need.
Okay, good. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, so that is a great segue into the next three. I've kind of gone to, so within all of the operating budgets that we've been looking at so far, there are different buildings. So within the fire budget, there's the fire station and the fire training center. Within the RCMP, there's obviously the RCMP station. Within general government, we have City Hall and a couple of the other buildings that the city owns. And then in public works, obviously we have all the different buildings there. And Parks and Rec has, you know, the maintenance costs and things for the buildings for the arena and the community center and stuff. So this year, as part of the budget process, I wanted to get an understanding of just how much money the city was spending within all of its different budgets on maintaining our facilities. And so what I've done here is I've pulled all those different amounts together. So this shows you a summary of what we're spending to maintain all our assets, our facilities. These numbers are not additional to the budget. It's just, I've pulled it all together so we can look at it at once rather than it being buried off. It still has to be reported out as part of the proper departments. So this reporting doesn't necessarily go out, but it is part of the budgeting process. And I wanted you guys to look at this. And part of the reason, the push for doing this was because we did have a building condition assessment report done this year. So that was completed in probably about a month or two ago, Darren?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And
So
keeping
now,
it, you'll have to add a lot of that input from that report in subsequent years beyond the 5-year term, right?
Exactly. And so what we're in the process of doing now, which is we being Darren and myself and a couple of Darren's staff, is we're taking the information from this condition assessment report, and then we're analyzing it and we're seeing how much of it is actually stuff that would be covered under our O&M budget and how much of it's larger ticket items that would be covered through a capital budget. So right now I'm still doing that analysis. I have not got it to the point yet where I'm comfortable changing the budget numbers going forward, but I'm hoping that I might actually be able to get it integrated, if not into this budget cycle, for sure into the next one. But I wanted to give you guys a heads up of what we're working on. And so I thought it was interesting to look at that overall, the budget for maintaining all of our facilities is just over $2 million. That's the operating budget. So we've budgeted 2 million. At this point, we're at 1.55 that we've spent in 2020. Obviously, COVID's kind of impacted some of that. But I thought it was good information for you guys to be able to look at. And then the other one shows it by building. And so you can see all the different buildings. There's City Hall, other city properties.
Scroll that out a bit.
Sorry?
Can you like plus the minus sign, just zoom it back a bit?
Oh, like that?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks.
So other city properties would be the two houses that the city owns, as well as what we all call, well, some of us call the Century Valley building. Some people call it the Price of Markle building, depending on how long you've lived in Revelstoke. That's what falls under there. The courthouse is obviously in there. Police services would have the RCMP building. Fire law enforcement would be the Animal Pound building. Fire protection, as I said, would be the fire station and the fire training center as well. Obviously, all the public works buildings are in there, and then all the different facilities and buildings that we maintain within the recreation function. So this is a summary of the same numbers, but just by cost center or by department. And there is some revenue up here. So we do collect some rental revenue from, we collect rental revenue for the RCMP station and then for the courthouse as well. So that's what the rental revenue is coming from.
I have a question. The $92,000 of rental income shown on this one is different than the rental income that's shown on the,
Public Works one?
yeah.
Yes, because this would have courthouse and police station in it, where the other one only had courthouse.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so the
Okay.
police station, we have an agreement with the E division, it's called, and they pay a certain amount of money towards the debt costs from the building of that, of the financing of the building of that structure, because it's relatively new. And then they also pay for a portion of the maintenance on the building.
Okay.
So they pay for about 70% of the cost of the building, the other 30% the city pays for.
And why are the maintenance expenses for the buildings going to be over this year if we had some of them shut down? Did we do like a lot more projects because we had?
Yeah, just because they were shut down, we actually still had to do all the maintenance on them, and so we did do all the maintenance still.
But it looks like we're going to go over budget. So my question is, did we take the opportunity of them not being used to upgrade lights or whatever other things needed maintaining?
I don't know if we're going to go over budget or not. Some of them we.
Under budget.
Well, it's already over. The maintenance expense shown in that fourth link shows that we're already at the 2020 budget of 154.
Oh, you're talking about in this one here?
Yeah.
Yes,
Wow.
they would have done, we've got 761 spent. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong number.
That's okay.
Sorry.
maintenance-
Yeah, I was looking
No.
at, sorry, maintenance is under contracted. Contracted services is going to go over. That's what I was wondering about.
It is over a little bit. It just sometimes they'll use a contractor rather than wages. It just depends.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Tanya, just a question, like on this page that you're on there, thank you. So what falls under maintenance? Is that like janitorial services, that kind of thing?
Utilities, janitorial.
Okay, so your hydro,
general,
heating
yeah,
costs, that's all under there.
Yeah.
Okay, because when I read maintenance, I'm just like, oh, that's somebody, painting and fixing some drywall, and
It's that too.
I was like, holy moly, that's a lot of maintenance, a lot of drywall we're fixing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's utility costs and everything. So just a question then, City Hall,
Mhm.
we're slightly increasing that. I didn't do the math.
Oh,
Shouldn't that be at least holding still? Because I know when we talked about the renovation, one of the things they said was that the estimated on heating costs and electricity, the heating alone, it said in the thing, was going to go down, they figured 8 to 10%.
yes. And I'm hoping it will. So the increase would be partly because of wages, because a lot of the maintenance and stuff is done by QP staff. And so I would have increased all the wage budgets by the 2%. But yes, I'm not sure how much we're going to save yet on the utilities. And I'm going to actually do a comparison when we get through the month of December, because now the windows are all in. I'm going to look at November, December compared to last year and see how much of a difference it is. And then I may adjust the utility cost for City Hall down. I haven't done it yet because I want to actually have something to compare it to as an estimate.
But wouldn't salaries be reflected in the salaries line and not in the maintenance
Oh, I'm
line?
looking at the sub-department.
Oh, gotcha.
Talking about the City Hall, where I've got 143 instead of 142 for this year.
Gotcha.
And so the difference would be it would be wages.
Hmm.
So with all those departments then that aren't nearly like on the maintenance expenses, we're like what, 5, 8, 9, almost 500 grand approximately underspent.
Mhm.
I mean, there's no
Well,
way you, pardon?
They do a lot of stuff in the last couple months of the year.
So this is to the end of October. So,
Yeah.
so you're saying that 500,000, almost half the budget is spent in the last 2 months?
Not necessarily, no. But they may go over on the contracted services. So some of the stuff that they may have planned to do internally with wages and supplies, they may choose to use a contractor instead, and then the cost would get shifted up there. And that looks logical to me when I'm looking at the fact that they've already spent all the contracted services budget.
For sure. So what happens with any savings this year then? What happens
so-
with that?
Well, technically, it would either fall into a surplus at the bottom,
Okay.
which I will then come back, if depending on if there's a surplus overall for the city, then I would come back to council with my recommendations of what to do with that money.
Okay. So, okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Darren spent more on snow removal this year, so.
Yeah, and like some of these things, obviously, if the expenses at the rec center, like that's the only thing is like I'm just thinking like the rec center and the pool and the arena, obviously we put up plexiglass and stuff like that. Those costs we don't need to pass on to the taxpayer.
No, those will be.
We should have budget for that.
Yeah, they're being covered separately. I'm tracking those expenses in what I call a COVID account.
Perfect, and we'll use COVID money for it.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll show you some of those numbers tomorrow.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I have a
further
question.
Jackie, go ahead.
Yeah, the bylaw expenses are under budget, and I'm wondering why.
Oh, for the buildings?
Yeah.
It may be that they didn't need to do any work out of that building. I don't have a lot in that budget. It just depends on what happens. Depends on where they spend their time as well, but I'm assuming there hasn't been any major issues or any maintenance that needs to get done at that building, as they haven't had time to get to it this year. Yeah.
Wait, I'm confused. Sorry, they have their own building?
Yeah, they do.
The dog pound.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
That's where your dogs
are at the courthouse all year, though.
Sorry?
Don had said once COVID happened, then they were out of the courthouse.
That would be bylaw enforcement, yes, but the actual bylaw enforcement building is the animal pound.
Gotcha.
Okay, so this is not operational. This is all.
This is their building.
Just the buildings.
So this is where the Humane Society is then?
Exactly, yep.
Okay.
So, but all those parks and recs fees that are listed then are maintenance costs for those buildings, for those facilities.
Yeah. Yeah, I've just pulled them all together so you can see what we're spending on to maintain all the different buildings that the city have. I would actually pull up the value of everything on our statement of values for insurance purposes, but I didn't quite get there, sorry.
So, but just to be clear then, so these numbers are the cost of operating and maintaining those buildings, but it doesn't include any new equipment or upgrades to the facility or anything like that.
No, this is just operating them.
Got it. Thank you.
And just one further to that to clarify on Jackie's thing then. So if we look at the arena, the 354,000 we're budgeting for 2021, that's just the cost to maintain in terms of janitorial utilities, but that doesn't include staff wages.
It would include the building staff wages, yes, not necessarily.
That's not like the lifeguards and stuff.
No.
So that's just the building wages, and to keep the lights on, to run the arena, for instance, is 354.
Yeah, and to run the plant and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It'll be the staff costs as well for running the plant, cleaning the ice, that sort of thing. Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Any further questions on this? Okay, let's carry on, Tanya.
The next one is just the capitals at the moment. And like I said, this is not being updated for the results from the condition assessment. And so a lot of these, you'll see the dollar amounts aren't large, and I will probably start shifting a lot of this over to O&M when I can. And then, but yeah, I just thought you'd like to see, as you can see, the arena roof, when I did this, I had the arena roof, and next year, I'm actually have now shifted that out 1 year.
Okay.
So, because
we still don't even have designs for that, Lori said a couple of weeks ago either, right?
I'm not sure about the status of that. Steve, are you able to comment on that at all?
Yes, I'm pursuing some consulting services to evaluate the work that has been done previously. My concern at this point in time is that we have some designs for the roof. I'm not certain that the consultants actually looked at the foundations and the columns that support the roof.
Yeah.
And I need to make sure that when we put a new roof on that can take 150 pounds per square foot versus the 50 pounds per square foot that it's been designed for, that the rest of the building will hold that roof up.
Yeah.
Once we know that, then we'll be able to do a fiscal evaluation and present you with options on direction to proceed. And then if it is successful, that the building can be renovated in a way that allows us to utilize the existing structure, then we will go to design and then come forward with a tender price to pursue. And so we're looking at probably another, excuse me, architecture firm and engineering to do the roof, probably 6 to 8 months. So we're probably looking at 2022 to actually do construction, should all of these stars align.
Let's hope that there's some grant money in the meantime again.
That would be nice, yes.
Yes,
But if we're gonna have to do it and borrow for it,
it's
now
a good time to be borrowing.
Yeah, interest rates are low for sure. Go ahead, Jackie.
I was just curious, what is the $40,000 facility needs assessment?
what is that, sorry?
It's on page 2, second row.
That would be probably, which building is that? That's on the community center. So that would be probably analyzing whether or not the facility itself, it actually meets the needs of what the community needs.
So what, like, is that engaging with people, surveys, like?
I believe so. Steve's nodding his head.
Yes, it would be to further evaluate, are we providing the services that the community needs now, or do we need to change direction, provide different services? And then how we make those services come to fruition. And so I can't even think of an example right now. Maybe we want to have a poker table in one of the rooms instead of using it as a gym. You know, that sort of thing, what the community feels we need to do with different sorts of recreational activities.
That's including our programming and that sort of thing.
Programming, exactly.
Okay.
That's not an area that I know a lot about, I'm sorry. But
Jackie, are you frozen?
I'm sorry?
Jackie, are you still with us? You look like you're...
Oh,
Yeah. Dropped. Just if I can then, Gary.
Sorry.
So, go ahead.
Sorry, my computer just died and it wasn't plugged in. So I missed the answer to that question, but I can come back to it if you're in the middle of asking.
Well, no, let's go back to it now. So,
Okay.
Steve, are you still here? Yep, you're right above Jackie now. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, just to continue an evaluation of the current uses versus what the community feels is preferred future uses, and how to adjust what we have in order to accommodate those uses.
Okay.
So if it's a changing, the example I gave was poker tables in one of the rooms versus a bunch of stationary bikes, you know, that sort of thing. If the community feels that we need to change our level of service or provide more daycare, provide those sorts of things, that would be the process to go through in order to make sure that we're meeting the community's needs.
So is this kind of like one of those, you know, you should do it every however many years, like it's a good protocol or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not budgeting for that for another, it's not anywhere else for another 15 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I guess my just opinion is that seems like not something that's super urgent.
Yep.
It's not like if we don't do that, you know, something is going to deteriorate. So if we're looking for things to push off, I would recommend that be one of them.
Obviously, I would be talking with Lori about that, obviously, but having said that, that is one of those things where when we do the evaluation of what we need to do to maintain the buildings, the one comment would be that you don't want to necessarily go and spend a bunch of money to do major upgrades to a building if you actually, the future needs of it are going to change, like it's what we're using. So when the condition assessment is done, it's done based on the current uses of the building and the condition of the building itself, because it's servicing those uses.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do something like this, we did one as well for the arena before they came up with the design for the arena roof replacement. Again, for the same reason, they want to make sure that what they're doing to the arena, because you're spending a lot of money, actually meets the needs of the community.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I just
Sorry,
go ahead, Cody.
Go ahead,
Oh,
Cody.
yeah, no, I was just going to say that I agree with Jackie. My understanding of how just Steve explained it was kind of just like a need, seeing what the community wants. The poker table, Steve, you can't put your poker table at the community center. But I just think, again, in a year where Steve has just mentioned that there's other things coming here, it might be tight. That's something that I don't think the community would want us spending $40,000 on to see in
Yeah.
this year. Not
Yeah.
saying it's not important, but I think, but I was just going to say, like, looking through it, I mean, I'm not an engineer, I'm not the professional here, just we get to provide our feedback on our budget. But I think with COVID, and obviously with the State of the Union thing and management updates coming, when where we're at and where we're looking at, I don't think it's a wise move fiscally to basically put a single dollar into the rec center and the pool next year, unless absolutely needed. I know Lori had indicated last year the sand filter would be a big thing, and I'm in full support of that if that's what we need to keep the main pumps on the pool running. But when you look at things at the bottom about like rock climbing wall for the swimming pool, lights, flooring, the dividers and the thing, if it's my recommendation and will be when it comes to council is to boot those things out. Right now, I just think they're unnecessary. Climbing
I agree.
replacement, I mean, it's not even being used. It's not even being used at the pool right now because of COVID.
Councillor, if I may, this is outside of my purview with engineering.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm just commenting on it because it's on the presentation.
And I'm
Yeah.
making notes.
I agree with those comments.
I would also, if we keep going down the list there, we also have about, I think, a few $100,000 up to $500,000 for Williamson Lake Campground.
Yeah.
Infrastructure also. And so if we look at it that way, assuming that I can get everything tendered and built in time to spend all the money next spring, you know, that money will then be returned to the parks
It
reserve.
is actually grant funded in here. You're talking about this?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
is that accurate though? Because 2020 we had about that much, and then our RMR funding this year, just a couple months ago, we allocated a few more $100,000.
I do, because it's grant funded, I need to increase the number. It doesn't impact the overall budget, not like the reserve funds, but I do need to increase it. And I've brought forward what was in 2020 to 2021. So I do need to adjust the number.
Okay, yeah, because I think it goes up by like another 200,000 or something.
Yeah, exactly. There's 380 in the first year, and I originally had 270 out here, and so that probably will get brought forward.
Yeah, well, and plus the additional money that we took from other projects, the RMI and council. So, okay, yeah, there's a lot of money there from the TIC now for Williamson, which is really exciting.
Yes.
And if we get that $1 million thing as well.
We also have the council directed us to pursue those grants also for
Right.
Woodenhead and Williamson.
Yeah, that's yesterday. Yeah, that's awesome.
So there's more
We can
money.
make that thing really look so, just be a community gem again.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
I have a
And-
last question. Or
Go ahead,
Go
Jackie.
ahead. I was just wondering if we want to implement a Bear Smart garbage solution. I imagine most of the cost would be in equipment kind of conversations for capital plan. But I'm wondering, Steve, if you know if there's any kind of engineering implications, like would there be required, would we require a study or, you know, any of those kind of implementation costs? And if so, I would like to see that put in the long-term budget for when those pieces of equipment come up for renewal.
Thank you for bringing that forward. We will be talking about that tomorrow at our session, and that is an item that both Darren and Caitlin, our climate change coordinator, are working on as far as opportunities and constraints related to being Bear Smart and what that looks like. Obviously, that also requires integration with the OCP and you know, the style of how we're managing garbage. Is it neighborhood? Is it household? Is it regional? Where we put these things and the costs associated with the different sorts of bins and things like that in collection. And so that is on our list of projects to also undertake for next year.
Okay, yeah, I just, yeah, we should put it in the budget too.
Yep. All right.
Just a question about the museum, Gary, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my understanding is that with the museum, we fund them through a grant and aid program for like, I think it was 75 or 77,000.
80.
And then, pardon?
I think it's
80.
80.
80,000?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Cody.
Oh, okay. So, but maybe I missed it and I wasn't paying enough attention. Was that on the maintenance as well there? Because we cover, pardon?
Yes.
So we cover with the museum. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. So we cover all their maintenance, their utilities, the capital because it's a CO-owned building, and then the grant and aid that we give them, that's for the board to decide on kind of thing.
Yeah, the council, yes. I'm just gonna look and see. I'm not sure if we pay for utilities or not. I'm just gonna check the budget.
So with the egress, is that, I'm assuming Darren or Steve, is that just like a new egress window thing or that they need?
I believe it's egress from the second floor. I could be wrong though. Darren, do you know?
Which is that, sorry?
There's egress. It's basic. Sorry, it says basement egress right there. So you must have done the other one. So yeah, it's egress so they can get out of the basement in case of a fire.
Yeah.
So do we have to do window wells or something in that building?
I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'd have to check on that. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just, yeah, I was curious because then I saw exactly, Gary, like egress for me made me think like window wells or whatever. And then I saw next year it says window replacement.
Mhm.
So I was going, okay, well, if we're going to replace all the windows, shouldn't we do those? Anyway, it's just something that, pardon?
I can find that out for tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
that'd be awesome. That's all.
I have a question, Gary.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm just curious about what's going on with the library expansion. I don't see any money for it in 2021.
It's in the 20. It's because it's externally funded. I have it in the 2020 budget right now. I haven't brought it forward to 2021, so I will be doing that. It's externally funded, so I'm more concerned about making sure I bring forward the projects that are internally funded. But yeah, I understand that it's. Steve, do you know where that's at with discussions with Lori? I'm not even sure where it's at actually, but I know it's not moving very quickly.
I'm unfamiliar.
Okay.
We can have maybe ask that question tomorrow.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks.
Any further questions on the general capital plan? Seeing none, let's move on to budget to actual.
I'm gonna say if Steve and Darren want to vacate, they're more than welcome to, or they can stick around.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate you being here.
Bye.
So Gary, one of the things that Dawn had mentioned, or Miss Lowe rather, was possibly about Mr. Black needing more staffing support.
Yes.
But that's not budgeted for this year in engineering then?
I haven't got it in yet. We're still working on numbers and how we might fund that.
Okay.
So yeah, we could potentially have a bit of a discussion about that tomorrow. I haven't actually talked with Steve and I had an initial conversation about what he was hoping to get added. And then I'm looking at the budget to look at how that could.
How it all works.
Cover. Yeah.
Okay, so still some changes to come, but this is kind of a general direction where we're heading.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can you see the whole budget to actual?
No.
You need me to minimize it again?
One more. Bit more?
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Of course, now it's really probably tiny. So budget to actual to the end of October. I'm just going to bring up my notes that I had. Sorry, just a minute. Too many screens going on. So you can see that for the most part, the revenues are all relatively fully funded now, and that's normal at this point. There's a little bit probably under permits and licenses. Even though they're at 103%, there could potentially be some more revenue in there because that's mostly development services. Yeah, and there'll be a little bit more under grants potentially because we don't have all the RMI funds in there yet. They're always a couple months behind. But otherwise, that's all kind of where I expect it to be. And then when I look at the other expenditure, like the expenditure side of things, so we should be at about 83% based on where we're 10 months through the year. So we should be at about 83% of our budget. And so you'll see general government right on track, basically. Protective services looks low. Partly that can be the RCMP. We haven't received the final. They've only billed us quarterly. So I don't have 10 months in there. I only have 9 months. And even then I might actually only have 6 months because they're usually a quarter behind. Otherwise, bylaw and fire are in there, and they're a little bit behind budget, but not significantly. Transportation and transit is a little ahead of budget still, though the amount that they're ahead of budget is decreasing as time goes on. But snow removal is spent. So if it snows between now and the end of the year, we're going to be going over budget in that particular department. Garbage or environmental health services as well. Water and sewer are actually behind budget in general, and I'm going to factor that down to the roundabout work that they've been doing because they would have done a lot of work earlier in the year. So they only have one set of crew. And so if they're doing more on capital, sometimes they're not spending as much time on the operating side of things. Everything else though is, well, public health, that is the cemetery, and it is over budget. It is a fully funded function though, so the cost sharing will then go up. Everything else is kind of right where I expect it to be.
Just a question then. So if we look at the revenue for the utility taxes, obviously August and September are substantially down. Is that because something to do with the forgiveness that we gave?
No, that's actually because we bill commercial utilities every quarter.
Yeah.
So residential utilities once a year. And then we also have monthly amounts for the couple of metered customers that we have. So it does go up and down. Sale of services also includes things like the community center and those kind of things.
But okay, so with the right now with the revenue though, I think you said yesterday it was about 40 or 44,000 that we kind of forgave to businesses. That's being factored into this revenue as like missing revenue?
The credits are being booked, yes.
Okay, so taxation right now is 101%.
Yes.
So there's not going to be a need then, it looks like, to borrow at all then in lieu of what we thought might happen kind of thing?
Well, so for taxation, so this is what taxation is what we've actually sent out on the notices. It's not necessarily collections, right?
Okay.
We book the revenue when we book it. We don't record it when we receive it. But
Okay.
Cash flow wise, we're okay. But we have got a little bit more revenue than what I budgeted for, and that was non-market change predominantly.
So it looks like we won't have to use that borrowing bylaw that we passed.
Oh, no, we haven't had to use. No, we actually did quite well because a lot of the larger payments we get for property taxes came in on time anyways. And that would be things like the grant and lieu from Hydro. They paid it by July 2nd.
So just the cemetery is fully cost neutral. There's no subsidization there.
We get some funds from CSRD.
Yeah, so whatever we bill it through. So they'll give us a payment in August that is an estimate of what their share of all the different cost sharing functions are. And the cemetery, they give us what they think is 100% of the budget. And then when we do the year-end process, we reconcile that, and then they give it, we reconcile the difference.
Okay, so that I got you then. So it looks pretty good then right now. Like we're doing a lot better than most municipalities are.
Yes.
In terms of missing revenue, like some of them are missing millions and whatnot.
They are.
So once year ends calculated and everything, you're going to come to us obviously then, I'm assuming in January, February, and then update us on where we finished for the year then, and if we have a bit of a deficit that we would fund with, because I'm just thinking then with the lost revenue that from the pools and stuff, is that's factored in yet or no?
Yeah, this is just all that's in here for revenues is what we actually received. So at the end of October, Parks and Recreation was at about 39%. They're actually increasing because they're getting more revenue every month, obviously, but they were at 31% of budget last month, and now they're at 39% of budget. So it is improving. They are getting some revenues, but we're definitely down in our revenues in that function for sure.
Right, okay, so I'm just looking at from the perspective that, sorry, this dog's barking in the back. I'm looking at from the perspective that revenues actually look pretty good, and that's with less revenue as well than expected. So we're doing quite well there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I thought I understood it, but just wanted to confirm if it made sense to me. So, okay, awesome. I don't have any other questions. Thank you so much for including me.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for being here. Rob, you have a question?
Yeah, just a couple. So what came out of yesterday, the only concession the city made was a $55,000 hydro thing to the commercial entities downtown. Is that right?
Water, sewer.
Yeah, water. Okay, so when I do my COVID math, that's 0.2% that we've actually contributed to the downturn in our economy. I mean, I look at our business, I think in 20 or 30% is going to be the net effect of the downturn. And
I just have to take off. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Okay, good. Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Rob, I just want to, I know you're going about percentages, but what we also contributed was no fees for patios, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. So our net year-to-date revenue is on track to surpass our budget. Is that right?
It depends on which revenues you're talking about.
Well, total.
In total, we're on track. Yes.
Yeah. So there's been no reduction. And our expenses, are they on track to reach our budget?
They're down a bit.
Yeah. Not to match the communities. They're not down 20% or what you expect.
I'm missing the RCMP impact, and so that probably will put us right on budget as well.
Right. Well, I just worry that, everyone's paring down, but it doesn't seem the city's done its job.
Well, we still have to maintain all the assets and keep the roads clear and fix everything and make sure the water comes out of the taps and the toilets flush and the garbage gets picked up. And we've done a lot of stuff in the capital too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I get that. So our reserve has grown from the previous year. Now we're at 6. When we started here, it was 3.5, I think, but our transfer to reserve this year is 6.1 million.
And that's including all the utilities. So when you say the 3.5, you're thinking of just the general operating fund?
I just trying to recall some numbers from 2 years ago. It was 3.6 was our contribution from the reserve.
And that would have just been the general operating. It would not have included the water or sewer or Big Eddy water.
Mm-hmm. So maybe I'm off. I'm not comparing the same thing, but I see $6 million going into a reserve fund. Right?
That's according to the.
So we're very fortunate. Yeah. So we're very fortunate on that front to have that 6 million surplus. Is that right?
It's not a surplus.
Most. Okay. So yeah, it depends on how you describe it, but basically a lot of communities are struggling to get a reserve. They're running in deficits or finding a way to survive a deficit. So we're in a good position compared to most communities.
Honestly, I can't speak for the communities. I will admit that I'm not quite sure where their challenges are, because for the most part, we're all funded very similarly. And so they might have cash flow issues for sure, but I'm not sure why they wouldn't be collecting as much unless they actually gave everybody a tax cut. Last year in 2020, I'm not sure what other communities did in that regard. So I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, my general comment from me is I just want to make sure we're sensitive to our community. If we haven't been, I can tell you, we haven't felt the 30% that's going to really be biting in our town here. A lot of guys are going to be really hurting in the next little while.
And so
I
think the impact will be where we'll start to see an impact in 2021 will probably be in the revenues on the development services side, because even though we were in COVID in 2020, they were still going gangbusters over there. I'm surprised at how much was coming in the development, the building that was still continuing, even with COVID. And that didn't slow down at all. That department really didn't slow down at all. So maybe we'll see that happen in 2021. Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you what's going to happen next year, but that is a potential that we'll see that drop in revenue next year.
I think there's some big projects that are in the queue. So but I think that argument. I think there's been such a backlog on residential and such a high demand for where we are. So that's probably why, and the fact that we've just bumped up the fees. So it was 100% or more in building permit fees last year. we've continued to bump them up. So I guess we're in the
We
right.
got a 100% increase in our revenues from building permit fees, but
Well, I think of what I've heard, of what I recall from some of the builders is that it has gone up 100% or more. But that was on the building permit front. But I think we're very fortunate. But I just think that we want to reflect the sensitivity or reflect the community a bit more. You know, if we're on track for massive revenues and a big contribution to reserves. That's wild in my book. I can't quite comprehend.
And we'll, as we move forward through this budget process, we'll discuss those reserves and where that money will go to and how it funds some of our work as we move forward.
Yeah, my take is to take a hard look at the reserves. If the economy is struggling, then maybe we should be a little more lax on the reserve contribution.
Okay, point taken. Thank you for that. Yeah. Any further comments or questions regarding the budget or where we're at here with budget to actuals? Okay, seeing none, that's all that we have for today. Is that correct, Ms. McCabe?
that is correct, Your Worship.
All right. So I'm going to ask for termination of the meeting, moved by Councillor Rhind and seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you all. Thank you all for taking the time today. And just note that this has been recorded for to go on our YouTube channel. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
See you tomorrow.